We live in a world that rewards action. Click faster, trade more, do something. And in that endless motion, we forget the quiet power of stillness. This is a story about what happens when a trader loses control and what it takes to get it back. It's not about a system or a secret strategy. It's about the one thing that decides everything in the market: your mind. Over the next few minutes, I want to take you into the reality of overtrading, not as a theory, but as a mirror. Because every trader at some point faces the same truth, that the hardest battle isn't against the market, it's against yourself. This is that story: 30 trades, one spiral, and the long quiet climb back to control. I still remember the week it happened. 30 trades, 5 days, one screen, and a mind that couldn't stop. At first it didn't feel like chaos. It felt like control, like momentum, like I was finally in sync with the market, dancing with it, predicting every move before it happened. But that's the first lie the market tells you. It gives you rhythm before it takes away your balance. The first few trades went well. Small wins, quick entries, clean exits. Every tick on the chart felt alive. Every candle felt like a signal meant just for me. I wasn't trading the market anymore. I was trading myself, trading the rush. There's a quiet kind of addiction that hides inside every trader. It doesn't come with flashing lights or alarms. It whispers, you can do one more. You're still in control. That's how overtrading begins. Not with greed, not even with confidence, but with dopamine, with the invisible chemical that tells your brain you're almost there. And so I kept going. By trade number 10, I wasn't even looking at the plan I'd written. It sat there, a reminder of discipline I no longer had time for. I told myself I was adapting to market conditions, but the truth is, I was adapting to my emotions. Each trade blurred into the next. Wins didn't feel like satisfaction. Losses didn't feel like warning. They all just felt necessary, like breathing. The charts became a mirror not of price action, but of my own impulses. And every click of the mouse, every position opened, was me saying, I can fix this. I can catch it this time. But when you start chasing the market, it's not the chart you're chasing. It's yourself, the version of you that still believes control is possible. By the second day, I could feel my body tightening with every trade. My shoulders were locked, my breathing shallow. The room around me disappeared. Only the screen mattered, only the next entry. There's a strange moment in overtrading where your mind starts splitting in two. One part of you is watching detached, whispering, stop. This isn't you. The other part is possessed, clicking, reacting, convincing itself this is discipline. But it's not discipline. It's desperation disguised as control. I told myself I was learning, that every mistake was data, that one more trade would make it all make sense. But I wasn't learning. I was looping in the same cycle of impulse, regret, and justification. The market doesn't punish you with losses. It punishes you with mirrors showing you who you become when you're afraid to stop. By trade number 20, I wasn't thinking in probabilities anymore. I was thinking in emotion. If I lost, I doubled down. If I won, I tried to repeat it instantly. It wasn't about the strategy anymore. It was about me versus the market. And the more I tried to win that war, the more I lost to myself. There's a moment when overtrading stops being about money. It becomes about identity, about proving that you're not weak, that you can regain control. But control doesn't come from more action. It comes from stillness. And I had forgotten how to be still. On the third day, I woke up before dawn, eyes heavy but mind racing. I told myself I'd just watch. No trades, just observation. But the chart moved, and I moved with it. The first loss hit harder than it should have, not because of the amount, but because it reminded me I wasn't special, that no matter how many books I read, how many setups I mastered, the market didn't owe me control. So I traded again, and again, and again. 30 trades later, my account was smaller, but that wasn't the real damage. The real loss was invisible, the erosion of patience, clarity, and trust in my own process. When you overtrade, you don't just lose capital. You lose connection to your purpose, to your peace, to the quiet center that once guided your decisions. That night, I sat in front of the dark monitor long after the market closed. No candles, no price action, just reflection. And for the first time in weeks, I asked myself not what went wrong, but why couldn't I stop? Because overtrading isn't a technical problem. It's emotional. It's the symptom of something deeper, a discomfort with waiting, a fear of missing out, a craving for control in a world that never gives it. I realized then I wasn't addicted to trading. I was addicted to certainty. And when the market didn't give it, I tried to create it through volume, more trades, more clicks, more movement. But every extra trade was just me trying to escape silence. Silence is where the truth lives. And that truth was painful. I didn't trust myself anymore. That was the breaking point. The moment I stopped blaming the market and started facing the mirror. Because the market didn't make me overtrade. My own mind did. And until I learned to master that no strategy, no system, no technical skill could save me, the next morning felt heavy. The kind of weight that doesn't come from tiredness, but from shame. I didn't want to open the platform, but I did. It was automatic, like muscle memory built from obsession. The charts were waiting silent, indifferent, as if mocking the chaos inside me. I scrolled through the trade history. Red, red, tiny greens drowned in a sea of red. And still my first thought wasn't stop. It was, I can fix this. That's the cruel trick of the trading mind. Even when everything burns, the ego whispers that one good trade can erase it all. But that whisper isn't hope. It's addiction wearing the mask of logic. I remember staring at one particular loss, small, but it was the trade that broke something inside me. I had entered without confirmation, ignoring every rule I'd written. I told myself it was intuition, but it was just fear disguised as instinct. Fear of missing out, fear of being wrong, fear of being still. It's strange in trading, we learn to analyze charts, patterns, and probabilities, but nobody teaches us how to analyze ourselves, how to read the patterns in our own behavior, how to notice when our emotions are trading for us. That morning, I was no longer trading with strategy. I was trading with anger, revenge, frustration. Every click of the mouse was a scream that said, I will not lose control again. But the irony was that's exactly what I was doing. There's a point where emotion takes the wheel, when logic shuts down and the body takes over. Your heart rate spikes, your palms sweat, and every cell in your body screams, act now. It's not a choice anymore. It's survival. That's emotional hijacking. Your brain floods with cortisol. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational thought, goes offline. You're not a trader anymore. You're an animal chasing relief. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment I lost the ability to think in probabilities. I wasn't asking, what's the risk to reward? I was asking, how fast can I feel better? And the market doesn't care how you feel. It never does. Hours passed. I opened positions I didn't understand, closed others out of panic, watched losses multiply like reflections in a mirror. Every time I said just one more, it was another cut to my discipline. By the time the session ended, I wasn't angry anymore, just empty. The kind of emptiness that comes after the storm when the adrenaline fades and all that's left is silence. I leaned back in my chair and stared at my reflection in the black screen. I didn't see a trader. I saw someone chasing ghosts, ghosts of control, ghosts of certainty, ghosts of perfection. And that realization hurt, because for the first time I understood the real cost of overtrading. Not the financial loss, but the emotional debt I'd been building. Every impulsive click, every act of denial was a withdrawal from my mental capital. And now the account was overdrawn. It's easy to look back and judge yourself. But in that moment, I wasn't judging. I was grieving. Grieving the version of me that believed trading was only about skill. Grieving the illusion that discipline meant control. The truth was simpler and harder. Discipline isn't control, it's surrender. Surrender to the plan, to the process, to uncertainty. And I had fought that surrender every single day. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every decision, every emotion, every trade that made no sense in hindsight. And then a question surfaced, quiet, almost too small to notice. What if the problem isn't the market? What if it's me? The thought scared me, because if it was me, then I couldn't fix it with another setup or another indicator or another course. It meant I had to face something I had been avoiding all along my own mind. The next morning, I didn't open my trading platform. For the first time in months, I walked away, not out of defeat, but out of exhaustion. I sat in silence and just observed the thoughts, the urges, the noise. And somewhere between the chaos and the quiet, I started to see the pattern beneath the pattern. I wasn't addicted to trading. I was addicted to movement, to doing something, to feeling like I was in control. The market had simply become my mirror. It reflected every insecurity I refused to face, my impatience, my ego, my fear of stillness. That realization didn't fix everything, but it was the beginning of understanding that every trade is not just a transaction, it's a test of who you are when you're uncertain. And in that uncertainty, you either run to escape it or you learn to sit with it. That's when I decided no more running. The days after the breakdown were quiet, almost too quiet. When you've spent months living in the noise of charts, notifications, and flashing candles, silence can feel uncomfortable. It feels like something's missing. But that silence, that emptiness was exactly what I needed. For the first time, I wasn't chasing a setup. I was studying myself. I opened my old trading journal. Pages filled with numbers, screenshots, and brief notes like entered too early or emotion trade. But I realized something was missing from every entry me. The real me, my thoughts, my emotions, my state of mind before, during, and after each trade. So I started again. This time, not as a trader documenting data, but as a human observing patterns of thought. Every morning before touching the charts, I'd ask myself one question: what version of me is showing up to trade today? Sometimes it was the calm observer. Sometimes it was the restless chaser. Sometimes it was the wounded ego desperate to prove something. And I learned something profound. My results didn't depend on the market's behavior. They depended on which version of me pressed the button. When the restless chaser traded, the outcome was always chaos. When the calm observer traded, the outcome didn't always mean profit, but it always meant peace. That's when I understood that trading psychology isn't about controlling emotion. It's about not letting emotion control you. The market will always trigger you. It's designed to. It teases your greed when you're winning and your fear when you're losing. It rewards bad habits just enough to keep you hooked and punishes good habits just enough to make you doubt them. But through awareness, you start seeing the game for what it is. So I built a system not of strategy, but of self-awareness. Before every trade, I paused for 30 seconds, not to check indicators, not to read news, but to breathe. To ask myself, am I reacting or am I deciding? That single pause became my anchor. It was the line between impulsive and intentional. At first, I failed often. Old habits don't die, they whisper. They tell you you've got this under control, that one impulsive entry doesn't matter. But it always matters, because every click that comes from emotion is another brick in the wall between you and mastery. Over time, I began to recognize my internal cues. the tightening in my chest when I wanted to chase, the impatience when the market didn't move fast enough, the excitement that came right before a reckless entry. Those weren't random feelings, they were data, and that changed everything. I stopped fighting my emotions. I started listening to them. They became my early warning system. When I felt the adrenaline rise, I'd step away. When I caught myself seeking revenge on the market, I'd close the platform entirely. When I noticed boredom creeping in, I'd remind myself boredom is where overtrading begins. I began setting limits, 3 trades a day, no exceptions. At first it felt restrictive, then it felt freeing, because limits aren't cages, they're boundaries that protect your clarity. Something unexpected happened after that. My results didn't just improve, my relationship with trading changed. I stopped waking up anxious to find opportunities. I started waking up curious about how I would respond to uncertainty. Trading stopped being a fight for profit. It became a practice in self-mastery. Every chart was a mirror, every trade a reflection, every hesitation a message. And slowly, the noise began to fade. I no longer needed to prove anything to the market. I didn't need to prove I was right or that I could recover a loss. I only needed to prove that I could stay present, because presence is the trader's edge. When you're present, you don't chase, you observe. You don't panic, you respond. You don't cling to outcomes, you trust your process. That shift from external control to internal awareness was the real transformation. I started realizing that trading wasn't testing my technical skill. It was testing my emotional endurance. Could I remain patient when the market was slow? Could I remain neutral when it was volatile? Could I stay grounded when I was wrong? The truth is, most traders fail not because they lack strategy, but because they lack self-understanding. They keep searching for the perfect system outside of themselves while the real battle is happening inside. So I made a rule for myself. Every trade is a mirror. If I felt fear, I wrote it down. If I felt greed, I acknowledged it. If I felt the urge to force a setup, I stopped. I learned that emotion doesn't disappear through denial. It dissolves through observation. The more I practiced, the calmer I became. The more I journaled, the clearer I saw my patterns. And the clearer I saw them, the less power they had over me. Eventually, something shifted. Trading started feeling less like chaos and more like meditation. The charts weren't an enemy anymore. They were a reflection of rhythm, a rhythm I could flow with, not fight against. That's when I realized mastery isn't about never losing. It's about never losing yourself in the process. I used to think trading discipline meant being cold and mechanical. Now I understand it means being aware and compassionate. Compassionate enough to forgive your own impulsiveness and aware enough to see it before it takes over. Every loss became feedback. Every pause became power. Every waiting period became growth. It's strange how much peace you find when you stop needing every trade to be a win, when you stop trying to control outcomes and start mastering reactions. That's when trading becomes something more a mirror for consciousness itself, a tool not just for profit, but for personal evolution. And for the first time, I understood why I had to fall apart in the first place. Because sometimes you need to lose control completely to understand what real control actually is. There came a day when I realized the charts no longer frightened me. The candles moved, the price shifted, but inside there was stillness. No spike of adrenaline, no whisper of panic. Just breath, just rhythm. That's when I knew I had changed. Not because I stopped losing, but because losses no longer changed who I was. I used to think the goal was control the market, control the outcome, control the future. But control was never the goal. It was the illusion keeping me from peace. True mastery is not control. It's surrender. Not surrender in defeat, but surrender in understanding that the market moves as it will, and I am only here to respond with clarity. Every trade now begins with silence, a breath, a reminder I don't trade to win. I trade to remain aligned with my process. Some days I don't trade at all, and those days feel just as successful as the green ones. Because mastery isn't measured by profit alone, it's measured by how little of yourself you lose while pursuing it. I learned that patience isn't waiting, it's trusting. Trusting that not every candle deserves your reaction. That sometimes the best trade is no trade. It took me years to understand this simple truth. The market isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. It reflects your fear when you chase. It reflects your greed when you hold too long. It reflects your doubt when you exit too early. But if you watch closely, it also reflects your growth. The calm after hesitation, the pause before impulse, the quiet confidence that comes only from discipline. That's the beauty of trading psychology. It's not about perfecting strategy. It's about perfecting awareness. Every trader begins with the desire for freedom. Financial freedom, time freedom, independence. But what we really crave is freedom from ourselves, from the noise, the doubt, the endless need to control. When you master your psychology, you get that freedom. Not because the market changes, but because you do. Now, when I sit before the screen, I see it differently. The charts are no longer battlegrounds. They're landscapes of possibility. Every candle tells a story, but I no longer need to chase every chapter. Sometimes I enter a trade, sometimes I don't. Either way, I win, because I decide, not my emotions. There's a moment in every trader's journey where the noise fades and awareness takes over, where you stop asking, will I win this trade, and start asking, did I trade with presence? That's the moment trading stops being about money. It becomes about mastery, self-mastery. And when that happens, the metrics change. A losing day doesn't mean failure. A winning day doesn't mean success. The only measure that matters is inner balance. I've come to love that balance. It's quiet, it's steady, it's real. There are still moments when old habits try to return, the urge to click, the pull of excitement, the whisper that says maybe this time will be different. But now I see them for what they are, echoes of an older version of me. And when those echoes appear, I smile. Because awareness is victory. Even noticing the emotion means I am no longer trapped by it. That's what mastery feels like, not perfection, but presence. Not control, but clarity. Not chasing, but choosing. I used to believe trading was about predicting the market. Now I know it's about predicting myself. Knowing how I'll respond when uncertainty comes. Because uncertainty never leaves. You just learn to breathe through it. That breath, that pause between stimulus and reaction, is where every profitable decision lives. Not profitable in dollars, but profitable in peace. And that peace is the ultimate return on investment. So when I look back on those 30 trades, the overtrading, the chaos, the sleepless nights, I don't feel regret anymore. I feel gratitude. Because every impulsive click was a step toward awareness. Every loss was a lesson in humility. Every mistake was a mirror showing me what still needed healing. The market was never against me. It was guiding me patiently, painfully, perfectly toward the only edge that truly matters, mastery of mind. Now when people ask me what changed everything, I tell them the truth. It wasn't a new strategy. It wasn't better analysis. It was the moment I stopped trying to control the market and started mastering myself. That's when everything changed. Because once you master your mind, every market becomes tradable, every loss becomes tolerable, and every day becomes another chance to practice presence. And that's what trading really is, not a chase for wealth, but a journey toward awareness. 30 trades taught me that lesson. Overtrading broke me. Awareness rebuilt me. And now control isn't something I seek. It's something I am. When I look back now, I realize that trading was never just about money. It was about awareness, discipline, presence. Overtrading broke me, but it also revealed me the parts of myself I couldn't see when I was chasing wins. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that the market doesn't care about your ego. It cares about your consistency, your patience, your ability to stay calm when everything around you moves. Mastery isn't built through endless trades. It's built through awareness, through learning when not to act, when to breathe, and when to simply observe. You don't need to control the market. You just need to stop letting it control you. Because once you master your mind, the market becomes simple. Not easy, but simple. And that's when the real profits begin, not in your account, but in your consciousness. This is mind over markets. And this is where the real trading begins.